Hi, I'm Nolan Gore with Top Choice Lawn Care, and it is really cold out here. I just checked my phone. I think it said sub 20. Feels like single digits. I should not be out here filming this for you, but I wanted to talk about winter cutbacks, pruning for you, what to look for, because what you're about to see is a whole bunch of stuff that looks dead because of this weather. Some of it will be, but most of it won't be. I want to walk through a couple of specific examples to help you understand what to look for and how to treat those plants. So to talk about pruning this specific plant, this is a lantana, very common here in Central Texas. Oftentimes you'll see these as bright yellow or sometimes like rainbow colored flowers. But this is obviously a purple trailing lantana. They get big and bushy as they get mature. This is still green because it just got cold in the last 24 hours, but in the next 48, 72 hours, it's gonna look dead and crispy. It's not. What you need to do is you basically need to cut this back to just a couple of inches. It's gonna look like sticks until the spring, and then it's just gonna start blowing up. And by, I don't know, April, May, it'll end up being a really big, beautiful plant again, but it won't have all that dead in it. This is another obvious common plant. This is a yucca. There's lots of different kinds of yuccas, but these will be totally fine. They're desert plants, and deserts get cold, even though we don't think that very often. So they're really common, very used to being cold. The only thing you might see on these is they might get like the burned tips, and some people don't like those and they'll trim them, but you're not gonna have like the tip grow back. So if you have one that's particularly blackened or burned, you're gonna wanna cut that all the way to the base. You can kind of see we did that on some of these a while back in previous years, and it comes back pretty clean. But I do not recommend cutting this all the way down to the ground. It won't look that good in the long run. Cool. Another example here of a plant that is very common around Central Texas. This is a decorative grass. That's an overarching term for most decorative grasses. Obviously, this is a very specific kind of decorative grass, but these look fine. What they're gonna do after the freeze is they're all gonna end up with that brown dead look. And so what you're gonna wanna do is cut these back to a couple of inches. They'll come back strong as soon as the spring comes around. Obviously, for a much larger version, you'll have the ones that are like this big. You'll cut those back to about 12 inches, and ideally rounded. Sometimes you can flatten them out, but ideally rounded will be the most aesthetically pleasing through the winter months. So that's how you handle the decorative grasses. Okay, so talking about agaves in a freezing environment, these are wild agaves. So they don't look exactly like what you probably see in your yard, but the same rules apply. So agaves, desert plants as well, they do well in cold temperatures, and to a point, if they get all droopy and floppy, they're dead. Like, you're not gonna have them recover. But if they're still standing up like this, they're totally fine. What you might have though is these crispy tips like this. Like, this isn't gonna grow back, this tip isn't. And so what people will sometimes do is they'll trim off that end to give it a clean cut. But again, that tip isn't gonna grow back. So people will cover these up in order to make sure that they don't have those dead tips. I guess you can see like this is what a dead leaf looks like. This is a foxtail fern. They're beautiful. They will probably hold up pretty well, but what sometimes happens is they drop down, like they get all burnt and crispy. And so you just want to cut them off at probably 3 or 4 inches. They'll come back pretty strong in the winter as well. Now, if they're potted like this, maybe not, but of course, if they're in the ground in your yard, then they should turn out to be pretty good. This is a variegated Dianella, a good example of actually how it's going to start looking here pretty rapidly. It's going to get all brown and crispy like this, and the entire thing will look like that. It's obviously much more of a tropical plant, and so you actually might lose some of these in the freeze, but many of them, if they're well protected in a pretty decent microclimate, they will die back to a couple of inches, and then they'll come back pretty strong once the spring warms up. So beautiful plant, not exactly native for this area, and so that's why it gets hit a little bit harder, but it should be fine. It should come back hard, but it's going to look really dead here in a couple 48 hours or so. Thank you for watching me be miserably cold as I helped try to explain how we cut stuff back or prune things in the Central Texas winter after you've had a cold, whatever you call it, a really cold season like we're having right now. If you have questions about specific plants or about the plants we talked about, obviously this was not even close to all inclusive. I just tried to get you a broad idea of the kinds of things to look for. Then give us a call. We can do the cutbacks for you, or we can answer your questions. Let us know how we can help. This is a cedar tree. There's nothing about this that you should worry about from a cutback perspective, but if you wanted to use it as an excuse to cut down a cedar tree because you had terrible allergies this year, go for it. I mean, we can help you, but you should just cut it down.